All right, how's everybody doing? Hotep. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, and writer. It is Friday, December 21st, 2018. It's the winter solstice. This marks the first day of winter, came at about 5:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today. This is the shortest day of the year also in the Northern Hemisphere. Shortest day of the year. So I wanted to, and I'm testing out a new laptop. I had to buy a new laptop last night and been busy installing software and setting up the settings the way they need to be, things like that. So this is my first time broadcasting on Facebook Live with this new laptop actually live. Earlier today, I did a rebroadcast, and that went pretty well because this laptop has a faster processor than my older laptop. So, but I wanted to come on and talk about what's going on tonight in Washington, D.C. with the government shutdown. How's everybody doing? Angie, Kimberly, Corey, how's everybody doing? So you have a looming partial shutdown of the government. We're going to talk about this a little bit here. Partial shutdown of the federal government. 75% of the federal government has been funded, so 25% is going to be shut down. We're going to give you some details dealing with what's going on. But this came about because Donald Trump is trying to strong-arm Congress to get them to fund $5.7 billion to build a wall along the Mexican border that Donald Trump campaigned on and said Mexico was going to pay for. He did not say U.S. taxpayers were going to have to pay for this wall. He didn't say that he was going to shut down the government. When he campaigned, he didn't talk about shutting down the government for this wall. He said Mexico was going to pay for this wall, right? So, and what happened was in the U.S. Senate 2 days ago, you know, they had, this is tied to the federal budget, right? What he did was he tied getting the $5.7 billion in funding. He tied that to the federal budget, okay, to force it through. All right. So it passed. So, you know, every year Congress has to approve the federal budget. Okay, it's about $4.1 trillion, $4.2 trillion. It's approved in the House, it's approved in the US Senate, okay? So what he did was, because he was getting beat up by right-wing media, by people on Fox News, Rush Limbaugh on conservative radio, and Coulter, Laura Ingraham on Fox News, because he was getting beat up by people like this. Then what he does is he comes out today and in a series of tweets, he's pushing to get this $5.7 billion, okay, funded. Because Laura Ingraham said on Fox News that, you know, he had to get this done. And what people are saying is that if he does not get the funding for this fake wall, this is his last chance. Congress is supposed to be on recess right now for Christmas. A lot of the members of the House of Representatives have already gone back home. Some of the members of the Senate had gone home and then had to come back for this. And he knows that this is his last chance, and he knows that if he does not get the funding for this wall, then he's going to lose support from his base, because they see a lot of these other promises that he's made, he has not kept. And more information is coming out exposing him as the fraud that I told you that he actually was, okay? We saw Michael Cohen talking about the payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McCullough. We see David Pecker, CEO of American Media Inc., which publishes the National Enquirer, and he has entered into a non-prosecutorial agreement with the feds. And we know that Trump was in the room when the discussion of the payments were being made, and that's a campaign finance law violation, so that's a felony. We see the Trump Foundation has shut down. We know that he's going to have a lot of problems, not just with the incoming Attorney General of New York, but also with the one that's there now, because the current Attorney General of New York continue to expose the Trump Foundation. So there's 17 investigations going on right now dealing with Trump and businesses that he has ran in the last 10 years, things like this, right? So he sits up and watches Fox News a good portion of the day, and he's listening to conservative radio, and he's influenced by these people who are not elected officials and these people who are not vetted by the U.S. Senate. So then he comes today, this morning, and he meets with members of the House of Representatives, key members of the House of Representatives, to attach $5.7 billion to the funding for the federal government to push this through so he can try to push it through the Senate. And then he talked about, now we saw, I think it was yesterday, he changed his language, and instead of just talking about a wall, he's talking about slates, which is a different type, which is a kind of a type of fencing, okay? But what Trump is trying to do is strong arm Congress to get American taxpayers to pay for this fake wall that most immigration experts and experts along the border, most of them are saying, look, wall is not what you need, because the wall, you won't be able to see through the wall. You won't be able to see certain things on the other side that's crucial to see. So they're saying we need a combination of technology, we need a combination of manpower. So then it was either 10 or 11 days ago, he was meeting, we all saw it, he was meeting with Chuck and Nancy, Senator Chuck Schumer of New York, and Senator Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi of California. And he was meeting with them right in the Oval Office, and they were going back and forth. And he said that he would shut down the government over the wall, and he would take responsibility for the shutdown. He said, I'm not going to blame you for the shutdown, talking to Chuck and Nancy. He said, I'm going to take responsibility for the shutdown. So this is where we are. Trump is desperate. And see, what's taking place is he knows the walls are closing in. This was a horrible week for him. This was after yesterday, General James Mattis resigning in protest, okay, behind Trump announcing the withdrawal of troops from Syria, which is a huge mistake. He didn't consult with generals. He didn't consult with his national security, anything like that. Just totally ridiculous, right? And some of these stupid ass moves he's making, this benefits Vladimir Putin, this benefits Saudi Arabia, but some of these moves he's making also, I think, is to distract from these investigations that are taking place as well, okay? So this is what's taking place. So at midnight, the federal government is going to be a partial shutdown this time. So here's what's happening, okay? And you're going to have some federal employees that are not going to get paychecks, right, for the holidays. Okay, so let's look at this here. Washington Post, we'll look at a couple of articles, think about 3 articles. Washington Post and NBC News. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. And you just got to bear with me a little bit, because I just got this laptop last night. I'm still installing software. This is my first time doing Facebook Live on here. I just installed Zoom. Okay, how's everybody doing? All right. But this is the dumbest thing also. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of these idiots who voted for Trump are not going to get paychecks because they're federal employees and they believe the lies that this con man told. Okay. And if you follow my broadcast, you listen to my radio show, anything like this, I told you last year, Donald Trump is the first Russian president of the United States. I told people this last year. Donald Trump is the first Russian president of the United States. Okay. And if you haven't already realized that, keep watching. You're going to find that out. All right. Okay. So, and let me just share this quickly here. All right. How's everybody doing? Okay. So we got Corey, we got Thomas. And Trump is going to be forced to resign from office also. So Democrats take control of the House of Representatives in January 3rd, okay? And they will have subpoena power. They will have control of all the committees. There are up to 85 investigations that Democrats in the House of Representatives will be able to launch. Nobody thought Richard Nixon was going to resign from office, okay, until he did August 8th, 1974. That was 3 days after he turned over the Nixon tapes. He was sued for the Nixon tapes. He turned those over to the special prosecutor. Nobody thought Nixon was going to resign from office. He announced his resignation August 8th, 1974. And the following day at 12 noon, August 9th, 1974, he resigned from office. He became the first sitting U.S. president who resigned from office. Okay, I think you're going to have a second one also. All right, so let's look at this article here from the Washington Post. Where did it go? Okay. Okay, so we have a partial shutdown, and okay, here we go. Okay, so partial government shutdown assured after lawmakers leave Capitol without budget deal. All right. So large parts of the federal government are shutting down overnight at 12 midnight as Donald Trump, the first Russian president of the United States, torpedoed a bipartisan spending deal because it lacked the money he demanded for a wall along the Mexican border that he lied and said Mexico was going to pay for. This is what he conned these people who voted for him. Okay. Now, funding for numerous agencies, including those that operate parks, Homeland Security, law enforcement, tax collection, and transportation, were set to expire at midnight. Close to 400,000 federal workers are expected to be sent home without pay until a deal is reached, and numerous services will be halted in that time, with the impacts broadening the longer the funding lapse lasts. Now, very quickly, when he met with Chuck and Nancy about 10 or 11 days ago, they told him that they would give him the $1.3 billion, okay? They told him they would give him $1.3 billion. He wanted more, but they talked about how in the previous budget, he was given $1.3 billion and he had not used all of it. It was only about 300,000, maybe 400,000 of that 1.3 billion in the previous budget has been used. Okay, so he's just lying all the way, and he's trying to save face because he knows he's failing. He knows the walls are closing in. Okay, you have John Kelly, chief of staff, leaving. You have James Mattis, who resigned in protest. You're going to have some more people leaving also. He'll probably get rid of his Homeland Security director, okay? He's finding out things that Mick Mulvaney, who's going to be his new chief of staff, because Nick Ayers, who was the vice president's chief of staff, he didn't want the job, okay, for longer than 2 or 3 months, because he was planning to go back home to his family and stay, okay? So you got to understand, Trump is unraveling. Trump is unraveling. This fool is about to lose his mind. And Democrats have not taken control of the House of Representatives yet either. It's going to be all downhill from now, because say February, March, when all these subpoenas and more investigations hit, he's going to look back at this time as like the good old days. Seriously. So funding for numerous agencies, including those that operate parks, homeland security, law enforcement, tax collection, and transportation, was set to expire at midnight. Close to 400,000 federal workers are expected to be sent home without pay until a deal is reached, and numerous services will be halted in that time, okay, with the impacts broadening the longer the funding lasts. So the shutdown intensifies a standoff between Donald Trump, who is demanding $5.7 billion for a border wall that he lied and said Mexico was going to pay for, and congressional Democrats who have vowed to block any wall funding and have the votes to do so. It marks a deflating final chapter for Republicans as they complete 2 years of unified GOP control in Washington, as well as an acrimonious prelude to the upcoming era of divided government after Democrats take control of the House of Representatives in January 3rd of 2019. Now, Trump saw the final days of this year as his last chance to try to extract funding for the wall, while Democrats united against the wall and buttressed by big wins in the midterm elections, showed no signs of buckling to his demands amid a flurry of attacks this week. Now, he was able to strong arm it and get this through the House of Representatives, but everybody is suspecting that it's going to die in the Senate because as it stands now, you need 60 votes. When it comes to a budget measure, when it comes to a bill dealing with a budget, you need 60 votes in the U.S. Senate to get anything passed, and Republicans don't have 60 votes, and none of the Democrats are going to vote for it. Republicans have this, the new senators haven't been sworn in yet, if I remember correctly. So Republicans have 51 votes in the Senate, okay? Because the new Senate, just like the new House of Representatives, that they have not been sworn in yet. So we're still operating based upon the previous Senate. So it's 51, 49 Republicans. All right, so the White House and congressional leaders continued negotiations late Friday, December 21st. But by 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the House and the Senate had adjourned for the night. That made it impossible to vote on any spending agreement until Saturday. And it remained unclear whether any deal would materialize by then. It is unclear how long a shutdown might last. Donald Trump predicted early on Friday that it could drag on for a very long time, okay? So now some people are saying by January 3rd, the shutdown can end. And keep in mind, this is a partial shutdown. 75% of the government has been funded, okay? But I think I have a sneaky suspicion, you know, when a lot of these people who voted for Trump are not getting paychecks, they're going to put pressure on their elected officials to put pressure on him and say, look, you know, you better take that 1.3 billion or you better do something else, because two main things. One, he said he would, so he's trying to blame the Democrats now for not passing this in the Senate and shutting down the government, when he told Chuck and Nancy right there in the Oval Office, and everybody saw it, he said he would shut down the government, he would take full responsibility for it, and he would not blame them for a government shutdown. That's what he said. Two, this is the wall Mexico was supposed to pay for, that you lied to everybody and said Mexico was supposed to pay for. Okay, so the Senate on Friday considered legislation that would fund the government agencies through February 8th, 2019, and appropriate $5.7 billion for the erection of 250, that's their word, erection, not mine, okay, for the building of 215 million miles of wall structures along the Mexico border, all right? Now, the House passed that legislation Thursday evening, okay? But Senate Democrats successfully unified on Friday and refused to back that measure. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, said that, okay, we have a troll. Okay, I have to kick out the troll. You know, if you're a troll, you must have what? You don't have anybody spend Christmas with or something like that. You got to come on our page and mess with us. We don't come on your page and mess with you. Okay. It's sad you called me a troll, so you must have been talking to me. She's replying to somebody else. Okay. If you're not a troll, then let us know. But you know, don't come on here trolling, because I turn this into a comedy show and make a damn fool out of you. So, you know, anybody could come on, but you got the wrong one. Okay. All right, let's continue here. So Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, said Friday, December 21st, that Democrats were open to discussions with the House of Representative Republicans, but would not agree to any measure that funded the construction of a new border wall. Okay, so what they're talking about is using the $1.3 billion, because the $1.3 billion that was already allocated, it specifies how it can be used. So it can be used to fix like the fencing that's already there and repair the fencing that's already there, and that is taking place. Trump is lying, calling that the wall. When he was campaigning, he was talking about a wall, not a fence. He was talking about building a new wall. He wasn't talking about repairing a fence that's already there. So the $1.3 billion that was already allocated, it specifies how it's to be used. It could be used for technology, things like this, okay? All right, so this is what they're talking about. So when they talk about 1.3 billion, or 1.6 billion, because 1.6 billion was thrown out also, they're talking about along those lines, not to actually erect a new wall. So this is why Trump changed it, I think it was yesterday. This is why he changed the language and talked about slates, which is more of a type of fencing as opposed to a solid, like a brick wall, like he was talking about. And he was talking about a 10-foot brick wall. And then he said, oh, the wall just got 10 feet higher or something, you know, some nonsense. He just, I mean, you know, it's just some really, really dumb people that fell for this. Okay. I guess they still believe in Santa Claus too. All right. So Chuck Schumer said Friday that the Senate had unanimously agreed to a spending bill earlier in the week, which they did, and accused Trump of having quote unquote a temper tantrum because he wasn't getting money for the wall. Senator Chuck Schumer said, President Trump, you will not get your wall. You're not getting your wall today, next week, or on January 3rd when Democrats take control of the House, end quote. So Democrats tried to make clear to the White House for weeks that they had the votes to block any measure that contained money for the wall. As their power became clear to White House officials, White House press secretary, lion-ass Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she's supposed to be leaving at the end of the year. I sure hope she leaves. I don't ever want to see her again. She just just day after day after day, she just stands there and lies, and she has just like no self-respect. Because if she had any self-respect, she would have quit a long time ago. But White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders signaled this past Tuesday that Trump was planning to withdraw his request for the funds in an effort to keep the government open. And that's what happened, because there were reports saying that he was backing up on the request for the wall, okay? But then that's what but then what happened was when right-wing talk radio and people on Fox News were saying, look, you know, because Laura Ingraham was on Fox News and said, that's the woman that told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. Laura Ingraham. They had these idiots on Fox News, okay? But white people listen to them. You know, a lot of people listen to them, okay? And a smaller percentage of African Americans, but largely, you know, is largely older white people, especially white males, watch Fox News. And then when you look at Rush Limbaugh has somewhere probably around 20 million listeners. Okay. So, I mean, these people, you know, they have, and then you look at Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity has a show on Fox News and he has a daily radio show. All right. Geraldo Rivera, I know at one point Geraldo Rivera had a daily radio show. I'm not sure if he still has it, but you have a lot of these right-wing talk radio show hosts that are influencing a lot of these people out here. And it influences the way they vote, it influences the policies they get behind, etc. Okay, so we have to understand power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. Be sure to visit our website also, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can listen to our audio podcasts, listen to podcasts of our radio show, the African History Network show. All of my DVD lectures are there as well. We have digital downloads and online courses that I teach also that are on demand as well. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so as the power of the Democrats became clear to White House officials, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders signaled this past Tuesday that Donald Trump was planning to withdraw his request for the funds in an effort to keep the government open. But Donald Trump received a torrent of criticism from conservative lawmakers and commentators following this decision, and he reversed course on Thursday, scuttling a temporary bipartisan spending bill that would have extended funding through February 8, 2019, but did not contain money for his fake wall that he said Mexico was supposed to pay for. So on Friday, Donald Trump met with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell today and some other key senators, okay? So then Mitch came back, son of a Mitch, came back to the Senate and gave a speech, basically in support of the wall, but Mitch knows the votes don't exist in the Senate to pass this, okay? So on Friday, Trump urged Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, to change longstanding Senate rules to pass the House measure providing $5.7 billion for the wall. Mitch McConnell refused to do that. See, he wanted Mitch to impose the nuclear option, which reduces the threshold that you need to get a bill associated with a budget in the Senate passed. Instead of 60 votes, get it down to 51 votes. See, they did that for Neil Gorsuch, who was a horrible pick for Supreme Court, okay? Supreme Court justice, right? So Neil Gorsuch could not get he could not meet the 60 vote threshold because he was unqualified. So what did they do? They lowered the standard for this unqualified white male, okay? They lowered the standard for him so he can become a Supreme Court justice. All right, and that was the Supreme Court nomination stolen from President Barack Obama, blocked by Senator Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, because they wouldn't even give Merrick Garland, who was President Barack Obama's nominee for Supreme Court, they wouldn't even give Merrick Garland a hearing. Okay, I ain't say a vote, they wouldn't even give him a hearing. All right, so Mitch McConnell told Trump that they couldn't do that. That violates the rules of the Senate when it comes to a budget measure. They can't employ the nuclear option. Trump doesn't know how the Senate works, okay? He doesn't understand this stuff. He just knows he's in a world of trouble and he's trying to maintain his base because he needs his base to try to block impeachment of him, because he knows the Democrats are going to impeach him. He knows this. When they take control of the House after Mueller's report, and the NBC News, Ken Delanian on MSNBC, and he's on NBC also. There's reports, and NBC News has an article about this, NBCnews.com, that Mueller may release a report as early as mid-February. Okay, because it's looking like at least a large portion of his investigation is winding down. So Trump knows, the hammer's about to drop, and he knows he has nowhere to hide. Okay, all right, so all right, so let's keep going here. All right, so on Friday, Trump urged Mitch McConnell to change the long-standing Senate rules to pass the House measure providing $5.7 billion for the wall. Senator Mitch McConnell refused, making it impossible for Senate Republicans to marshal the measure through because Democrats control 49 seats in the 100-member chamber. Yeah, so we're still dealing with the old Senate. The new senators don't get sworn in. I think it's January 3rd also. Okay, and in that Senate, they will have Republicans will have 53 seats. People don't understand how important the U.S. Senate is. I'm serious. People do not understand how important the U.S. Senate is. All right. Okay, let's keep going here. So now Donald Trump said earlier on Friday in the Oval Office, he said, quote, "We're going to be working very hard to get something passed in the Senate." He said, "Now it's up to the Democrats as to whether or not we have a shutdown tonight. I hope we don't, but we've very much prepared for a long shutdown." Okay, but he said he wasn't going to blame the Democrats, And see, one of the problems with Trump, there's a number of problems with Trump. But one of the main problems is he keeps changing his position every other day or every other week. So it's hard to make a deal with somebody like that who won't uphold their end of the bargain. How do you make a deal with somebody who you can't trust like that? Now, Republicans were frustrated by the reversal, and Democrats warned Friday that the president's erratic and unvetted decisions in recent days were unsettling financial markets. Okay, we see the stock market, Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 400 points today. We see articles dealing with CNBC. CNBC.com has an article dealing with how this week was the worst week for stock markets in 10 years. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is made up of 30 stocks, okay? Stocks plunged again on Friday, sending the Dow Jones Industrial Average to its worst week since the financial crisis in 2008, down nearly 7%. A lot of this has to do with this fool and the uncertainty that's taking place in the government. And the markets do not like uncertainty. When it's coming to a government, and is going crazy also because General James Mattis announced. Well, Trump now announced Mattis was resigning, and that happened yesterday. And Mattis was looked at as one of the last guardrails there, right? Who was responsible and wasn't a sycophant, wasn't a kiss ass for Trump. And he was looked at one of the last guardrails to keep Trump from going crazy. But if you got General John Kelly who's leaving, who was his chief of staff, you got General James Mattis who's leaving, you had General McMaster, who was his national security advisor after he had to fire Lieutenant General Mike Flynn. Okay, McMaster was looked at as one of those to be like responsible to keep the reins on him. Well, if all these people are gone, then this fool gonna be buck wild. So stocks were down this week nearly 7%. on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. The Nasdaq index closed in a bear market, and the Standard & Poor's 500, S&P 500, was on the brink of one itself, down nearly 18% from its record early this year. Now, Trump is not talking about the stock markets. Now, I see Trump keeps bragging about the stock markets. Oh, we're at 25,000, we're at 26,000, blah, blah, blah. You know, he ain't talking about the stock market now. The Federal Reserve's rate hike this past Wednesday drove the losses this week, and fears of an extended government shutdown only added to the pain on Friday. So you had the, I think it was 0.5%, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates. That contributed some, but this uncertainty that's taking place in the government and these people leaving, that's affecting the stock market as well. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 414 points to finish at 22,405 in turbulent trading that sent the blue chip index up as much as 300 points early in the day, only to trade back in negative territory less than 1 hour later. So a lot of people who voted for Trump, their 401ks took a real beating this whole month, not just this past week, but this whole month. Okay, it's been going crazy. Okay, so check out the article. So let's look here. Here's the tally of the carnage. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 6.8% and 1,655 points this week. Okay, it was horrible for the Dow this week. It was its worst percentage drop since October 2008. And some people may want to associate that with Obama. Obama wasn't in office in 2008. He didn't take the oath of office to January 20th, 2009. So you can't blame that on Obama. That was under Bush. Okay. The NASDAQ lost 8.3% on the week. And then also S&P 500 lost 7%. Okay. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's 500, which are both in corrections. Correction is when they lose, the market loses 10% of its value, 10% or more of its value. It's in correction territory. These markets, these two markets, are both on track for their worst December performance since the Great Depression in 1931. Down more than 12% each this month. This is under Trump. Okay, and I saw an article today where Trump is worried that if the economy is terrible and if the stock market is in the tank, he's gonna lose re-election. I got news for him. He ain't gonna be around to run again. He ain't gonna be around for re-election because he's gonna be forced to resign in 2019. Okay, and if you were shocked when Ali B. Foreman's behind, wait till you see Donald Trump resign. He ain't gonna make it through 2019. He's gonna be forced to resign from office. There are gonna be too many investigations, too much evidence coming out. There are already 17 investigations right now on his ass. There are already 17 investigations. What happens when it gets to like 35, 40? And you find out about all these other women. You find about money, you find out about money laundering. This is with 17 investigations. Wait till it gets to like 35, 40. Okay, so check out this article here from CNBC.com. That's NBC's business channel. Really have like really good information on CNBC. They have some good shows on CNBC. They show the Shark Tank on CNBC also. And that's where also The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis. So I used to teach entrepreneurship. So I like a lot of shows geared around business and small business entrepreneurship, things like this. Watch The Prophet, Profit, The Prophet with Marcus Lemonis. Okay, he's kind of like a one-man Shark Tank. But what he does is he goes into failing businesses, right? Businesses that are failing, losing money, and he goes in and he just totally turns everything around. He works with the staff, works with the owners. He goes in, totally turns things around. So you can learn a lot about business watching not just the Shark Tank, but also The Prophet on CNBC as well. It's like one of my favorite shows. Okay. So Let's go back to this article from the Washington Post here. So Republicans were frustrated by the reversal, and Democrats warned Friday that Donald Trump's erratic and unvetted decisions in recent days were unsettling financial markets, foreign allies, and even members of his cabinet. Now, Senator Bob Corker, Republican from Tennessee, who is leaving the Senate, he chose not to run again, so he only has a few more days in the Senate. He's the one who said that the White House was like an adult daycare with them taking care of the toddler in the White House. He says like an adult daycare. But he said, quote, "This is tyranny of talk radio hosts," right? This is tyranny of talk radio hosts. And so how do you deal with that? He said, you have two talk radio hosts who completely flipped the president. And so do we succumb to tyranny of talk radio hosts? So he's talking about, largely he's talking about Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter. Okay, now I don't know if Ann Coulter has a radio show. She may have a radio show. I know she does interviews, but Ann, those are like the two main ones he's talking about. Now, Secretary of Defense James Mattis announced his resignation Thursday through Trump. Well, he turned in the letter of resignation, and Trump announced it also. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average had one of its worst weeks in recent decades and has fallen almost 4,400 points, okay, or 16% since October. You have multiple federal parks and monuments are slated to close, okay, under this partial shutdown, some as soon as Saturday. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, which regulates the stock markets, right? And regulates the financial houses, the investment firms, things like this. The SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, posted a list of the services it will soon suspend, including the processing of certain business records. Now, the Justice Department, the Commerce Department, and Internal Revenue Service are preparing to send thousands of workers home without pay. Now, we have to keep in mind, right, when you have a government shutdown or a partial government shutdown, usually that disproportionately negatively impacts African Americans. Why? Because African Americans disproportionately work for the government, especially federal government, because it's the federal government. They were the first ones to implement affirmative action laws. Okay, so we were able to gain some type of upward mobility by working for different federal government jobs. We were able to get a better chance, okay? So when you have a shutdown like that, a lot of these employees are gonna be African Americans not getting a paycheck. You're gonna have some white people that voted for Trump, but you're gonna have a lot of African Americans, right, that work for the federal government. And Trump's prediction that a shutdown would last, quote unquote, for a very long time meant that hundreds of thousands of federal employees risk missing at least one paycheck. Even the Border Patrol agents and Transportation Security Administration, TSA, at the airport, TSA officials who are directed to continue working during the shutdown will not be paid until Congress funds their agencies. I'm sure glad I don't have to fly dealing with TSA agents who are not getting paid. But see, this is Trump. Let's be clear, people. This is not Republicans pushing this. This is this fool in the White House that I warned you about in 2016. I told you he was totally unqualified to be president. I told you he did not have the right temperament. And then also we see the article from, we posted it here on our fan page, the African History Network. We see the article came out, I think it was today. He's told 7,200 false and misleading statements in the first 700 days of his administration. So today, I think it's day 702, because I keep track, right? I think the day is 702. This fool has told 7,200 false or misleading statements. How the hell do you do that? But see, yeah, Donald Trump has made, 7,546 is even worse. 7,546 false or misleading claims over 700 days. Who does that? This fool's going crazy. Okay? And he's and Donald Trump Jr. also is afraid he's going to be indicted as well. Donald Trump Jr., because see, Donald Trump Jr. lied in his testimony in Congress when it came to the Moscow Trump project, right? And Michael Cohen knows what happened because Cohen was setting up the deal. And then CNN, Chris Cuomo on CNN, got the letter of intent signed by Donald Trump for that project. And Rudy Giuliani said that didn't exist, it didn't happen. Then Rudy Giuliani had to backtrack and say, oh, it did, but it doesn't matter. There's going to be a lot of people going to prison. Okay? Donald Trump has made 7,546 false or misleading claims over 70 days. You should ask your friends that voted for Trump, why does he lie so much? We've never seen anything like this. Why does he lie so much? Did he forget what he lied about? Because remember, Trump said he has one of the world's greatest memories, or did he forget about that? He said he has one of the world's greatest memories, so why does he lie so much? Okay? So watch the Washington Post, man, they have like a really, really good fact-checking department there. And Michelle Yee does a lot of she writes some of the articles dealing with the fact-checking. They have a really, really good fact-checking department. That's why he hates Washington Post and Jeff Bezos. He hates Jeff Bezos so much. Not because of Amazon, really. Because I bet you Donald Trump orders stuff from Amazon. It's because Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, and he's also a real billionaire, by the way. He owns the Washington Post, and the Washington Post is kicking Donald Trump's behind. The numbers are astonishing. This came out today on the winter solstice, December 21st. So this one was done by Glenn Kessler, Salvador Rizzo, and Meg Kelly. Michelle Yee posted it because I follow her on Facebook, but she didn't write this. She wasn't one of the ones that contributed to this, apparently. But the numbers are astonishing. In the first 8 months of Donald Trump's presidency, Donald Trump made 1,137 false or misleading claims. Okay, I'm looking at the second laptop here. That's why I'm turning this way. An average of 5 per day. In October, as he barnstormed the country holding rallies in advance of the midterm elections, October 2018, he made 1,205 claims. Just in the month of October, that's an average of 39 false or misleading statements per day, just in October of 2018. Because as the Mueller investigation was heating up, as more information was coming out, he was telling more and more lies. Because remember, he made up that lie about a 10% middle class tax cut that was going to take place, and he said it'll take place sometime in early November. And they went to the White House and asked what the hell is he talking about. They said, we don't know what the hell he's talking about. And you really haven't heard anything else about this fake 10% tax cut? Combined with the rest of his presidency, that adds up to a total of 7,546 claims through December 20th. That don't even count the lies he told today on the winter solstice. That don't even count the lies he told today. This is through December 20th, right? The 700th day of his term. Yeah, so yesterday was 700, day 701. So today is 700, the 701st day of his term, but it's going to be a short term. And that's according to the fact checkers database that analyzes, categorizes, and tracks every suspect statement uttered by the president. So when you go and read this and you click on that link, the fact checkers database, they categorize all these. You can go and you can look at each one of these lies he's told, and they categorize, okay? The flood of presidential misinformation picked up dramatically as Donald Trump campaigned across the country during midterm elections, holding rallies with his supporters. Each of these rallies usually yielded 35 to 45 suspect claims. But Trump often tacked on interviews with local media in which he repeats the same false statements and gaggles with the White House press corps before and after his trips. The second biggest month was November of 2018, okay, last month, because that's when you had midterm elections. And he made 866 false or misleading claims in the month of November. And that's largely because of Trump's rallies just before the November 6th election. Okay, so you can check out the rest of this here. But well, and we posted the link here on the thread of the broadcast. But this is at WashingtonPost.com. Okay, President Trump has made 7,446 false or misleading claims over 70 days. All right. So let's go back to this article here. Let's look at some of your comments. Somebody said something about Mike Pence. You could be saying President Pelosi, because Mike Pence is in deep trouble too. And see, if you go study Spiro T Agnew, Spiro T Agnew was Richard Nixon's first vice president. Spiro T Agnew resigned from office 8 months before Nixon resigned from office, because Agnew was hit with corruption charges and tax evasion charges. So he resigned from office. So personally, I think Mike Pence is in deep trouble also. Okay, we got Mark. We've got Rihanna. Is that Rihanna? Rihanna Land. Mark said Bitcoin is stay here worldwide. No government can stop Bitcoin. It's just the value has dropped significantly in Bitcoin. Once they came out with Bitcoin futures, I think it was, the value of Bitcoin dropped so much. That's why you don't see a whole lot of people on social media talking about Bitcoin anymore, or cryptocurrency in general, for that matter. All right, so let's go back to this article here. It jumped to another article, so I'm trying to pull this back up. Let's look at some more of your comments. And then also NBC has a good article dealing with what is going to be open, what is going to be, have a good article dealing with what's going to be open and what's going to be closed during this partial shutdown, okay? And where the hell did that article go? Okay. Pull it back up. I think I have it up here also. Okay. So NBC News has an article, partial government shutdown set to arrive at midnight. Despite last-minute talks, the Senate left Friday night without passing a stopgap funding measure, essentially guaranteeing a lapse in funding, okay? And let me just get to, let me see, I'm gonna just get to anything else I didn't cover. Did they talk about what's gonna be open and closed? Okay. Pull that up. All right, so we got Jewel. What is a partial government shutdown? 75% of the government is funded and will stay open. 25% will be closed. What happens when the government shuts down? NBCnews.com. What happens when the government shuts down? Okay. And this deals with what's open, what's closed. Lawmakers went home Friday night without passing a stopgap funding measure, essentially guaranteeing a lapse in funding at midnight for several major agencies. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Let's see here. Okay, so only certain agencies will close. Congress has already funded 75% of the government through September 2019. Okay, so that's the fiscal year. And see, this is one of the responsibilities of Congress, okay, to fund the budget, to approve the budget. So the White House draws up a budget. They submit it to Congress for approval. Okay, so the budget is somewhere around like 4 trillion, 4.1, 4.2 trillion dollars. And funds go from the federal government to state government and from state down to counties and cities. Okay, so this means that many major departments like the Department of Defense, Veteran Affairs, Department of Energy, Department of Education will remain open and fully functioning because 75% of the government is funded. The shutdown will primarily impact 7 agencies which have not been funded and run out of money at midnight on Friday, okay? Midnight on Friday. Homeland Security, Transportation, Commerce, Interior, Agriculture, Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and Department of Justice. Other independent agencies like NASA, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, the EPA, okay, and we've got it up here on this laptop also. Hold on, it's just the same damn article. Let's see. Okay, this is the same one. Okay. Yeah, so HUD and all these, those are going to, the FDA, the EPA, and the IRS would have to furlough most of their employees. Other independent agencies like NASA, the FDA, the EPA, and the IRS would have to furlough most of their employees, meaning, so yeah. Okay, those departments and agencies will continue to be staffed by essential employees who would work without pay until the shutdown ended. All other non-essential employees will be sent home without pay, okay? More than 420,000 employees will be required to work without pay, and an additional 380,000 employees would be sent home, according to a fact sheet compiled by Senate Democrat staffers. That's 800,000 employees, basically. 420,000 will work without pay, and then once the shutdown is over, then they'll get the back pay. And 380,000 will be sent home without pay. Correctional officers, FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, TSA, that's TSA at the airport, okay? TSA, Border Patrol officers, Coast Guard employees, Forest Service firefighters, and Weather Service forecasters are all expected to continue working without pay. So you got a lot of African Americans that work at these agencies. These are government agencies. Okay, national parks, which closed during a 16-day government shutdown in 2013, will remain open, but park visitor centers will likely close. While parks will remain open, staff will not perform maintenance and upkeep like snow removal to make sure they remain accessible. Smithsonian museums and the National Zoo in Washington would use remaining funds to stay open and pay employees until January 1st. It is unclear if they will remain open past New Year's Day. Okay, the post office will also remain open, meaning any last-minute Christmas gifts won't be affected by a shutdown. Okay, all this deals with politics. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. All this deals with the flow of money to fund all these agencies. Okay. All right, so you can check out this article also here. This is from NBCnews.com. Really good article. Helps bring some clarity to find out what's going to be affected by the partial shutdown. But keep in mind who is responsible for this partial shutdown. And he said he would take full responsibility for it when he was meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer. This is Donald Trump. This is his shutdown. Okay. All right. What do you think about the Green Party? How do you compare it to mainstream parties? As far as what about the Green Party? I know Jill Stein was polling at about, I think, what, 2% in national polls. I talked to African Americans, say, oh, I'm gonna vote for Jill Stein. I say, you know that's a vote for Donald Trump, right? You know how to count. I say, you know that's a vote for Trump. And I said before, personally, I think you're gonna find out Jill Stein was working with Vladimir Putin. Go watch the broadcast I did. What was that, on the 13th? It's about 2.5 hours, dealing with it was dealing with Trump and Michael Cohen being sentenced. It was Michael Cohen being sentenced. It was dealing with David Pecker and National Enquirer. He entered into a non-prosecutorial agreement with the feds, and he's going to be probably be a witness against Trump. But also, I talked about Jill Stein being in Russia December 2015 at the 10th anniversary celebration for Russia Today TV. And I showed you the picture. Jill Stein is sitting at Vladimir Putin's table. Right next to Vladimir Putin is Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who Trump had to fire after he was his national security advisor for 24 days because he was open to being blackmailed. So Lieutenant General Michael Flynn is sitting right next to Vladimir Putin. Across from Putin is Jill Stein. And we're still trying to figure out, who paid for her to go to Russia? Who paid for her hotel or accommodations? Was she paid to speak? It's like, what's really going on here? So, in some elections, I ain't talking about the president. In some local elections, things like this, a Green Party candidate, it's possible they may be good. I need to look at the issues. I need to look at the issues and how their issues actually impact African Americans. And also I look at, well, who actually has a realistic chance of winning? Because just voting for people that don't have a chance in hell of winning, that's a wasted vote. I'm just keeping it real. That's just a wasted vote. We have to learn to think. We have to learn to vote more strategically, okay? And understand the impact that policies have and understand how to assess the policies of a candidate and see how they match up with our issues and our agenda. Green Party, Libertarians, yeah, some of the views don't make any damn sense. Okay. Sheila said she was in that photo. Hell yeah, Jill Stein was in that photo. You must not have seen in some of my broadcasts. I've dealt with that before. Yes. I talked about that. February of 2017. I talked about that in February 2017. I think that was February 2017, yeah, because I don't think it was this year. It's February 2017 I asked that question. Then I did that on the radio here in Detroit. I'm on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. I used to be on the morning show. So on the morning show, I dealt with some issues because I was doing research on this. And I'm like, what was she doing there? Yeah. Jill Stein, reparations. Jill Stein said reparations. Some black folks lost their mind knowing she couldn't win. Yeah, see, what you're going to find, this is what, see, I have to do a separate broadcast because I've been busy. I've been really busy this week, and I fell behind in a lot of video editing work because I was having problems with my first laptop. So I had to go buy a second laptop because I have a lot of video to edit. I got to edit this past Sunday's show and get that up on YouTube. So I fell behind in a lot of my work. But we just saw two big studies that came out, and I'm going through looking at some more information, right? We just saw two big studies that came out this past week. Oh, damn, this. That talked about how Russia targeted African Americans during the 2016 election. Okay? It's not news to me because I was telling people what was going on during the 2016 election. I was doing radio 5 days a week then. I was doing national radio. I was telling them then what was going on because I could see that Russia was behind it. But two quick articles here. Washington Post had one. New report on Russia disinformation prepared for the Senate shows the operation's scale and sweep. Okay? This is from December 17th, 2018. New report on Russian disinformation prepared for the Senate shows the operation scale and sweep. Okay? And there were two reports. The first report by Oxford University's Computational Propaganda Project and Graphica, a network analysis firm, offers new details of how Russians working at the Internet Research Agency, IRA, Internet Research Agency, which U.S. officials have charged with criminal offenses for interfering in the 2016 campaign, sliced Americans into key interest groups for targeted messaging. These efforts shifted over time, peaking at key political moments, such as presidential debates or party conventions, the report found, okay? And they used all forms of social media. It wasn't just Facebook. Now, there were about 3,500 Facebook ads that Russians took out, okay? And they were largely pro-Donald Trump, largely negative to Hillary Clinton. Some were pro Bernie Sanders and pro Jill Stein. Okay, so read that article from the Washington Post. That was like the first, because the Washington Post was the first ones to get their hands on the report. So that was basically like the first article dealing with that. Now, the second report, prepared for the Senate Intelligence Committee by researchers for New Knowledge, Columbia University, and Canfield Research, emphasized this aspect of the Russian operation, saying, quote, the IRA, Internet Research Agency, created an expansive cross-platform media mirage targeting the Black community, which shared and cross-promoted authentic Black media to create an immersive influence ecosystem, end quote, okay? The IRA created an expansive cross-platform media mirage targeting the Black community, which shared and cross-promoted authentic Black media to create an immersive influence ecosystem, okay? Let me back up to the previous paragraph. The Russians aimed particular energy at activating conservatives on issues such as gun rights and immigration, while sapping the political clout of left-leaning African-American voters by undermining their faith in elections and spreading misleading information about how to vote. So they put out stuff saying you can text your vote in for Hillary Clinton. Okay? Many other groups, Latinos, Muslims, Christians, gay men and women, liberals, gay men and women, liberals, Southerners, veterans, got at least some attention from Russians operating thousands of social media accounts. Okay, so that's one article. So that dealt with the two reports. That's one article. New report on Russian disinformation prepared for the Senate shows the operation scale and sweep. Okay, so then you have this, and that's Washington Post. So then you have this one here from New York Times, and thegrio.com had a really, really good, like, short article that was a really good synopsis of the targeting of African Americans. So I'm gonna do a separate broadcast dealing with this, because this stuff is deep, and this is what I was warning people about during the election. Because I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis, and I'm seeing stuff pop up from news sources I never even heard of before. And when I go research them, they're fake, and they're circulating fake stories. And a lot of those sites don't even exist today. A lot of those fake online digital news sites that were popping up in the 2016 election. A lot of them don't even exist today. Russian 2016 influence operation targeted African Americans on social media. This is from December 17th, New York Times. Scott Shane and Shira Finkel wrote this article. The Russian influence campaign on social media in the 2016 election made an extraordinary effort to target African Americans, used an array of tactics to try to suppress turnout among Democratic voters, and unleashed a blizzard of activity on Instagram that rivaled or exceeded its posts on Facebook, because they were using Instagram even more than they were using Facebook, okay? This is according to a report produced for the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee. The report adds new details to the portrait that has emerged over the last 2 years of the energy and imagination of the Russian effort to sway American opinion and divide the country, which the authors said continues to this day. And yes, it does, because you just got a lot of ignorant ass people out there that don't do research. A lot of them can barely read, and they just operate just based upon a bunch of nonsense, okay? But what you're going to find, what I think you're going to find, is that Jill Stein adopting reparations as a platform, knowing damn well she wasn't going to have to follow through on it because she knew she wasn't going to win. And see, when people try to use reparations as like a platform to be elected, my question for them is what's your legal argument for reparations? Number one, because a lot of the arguments are moral arguments, not legal arguments. And number two, how are you going to make it happen? Because we know HR 40's been sitting, can't even get out of committee. That was initiated by Representative John Conyers in 1989. And I know they just redid it like last year, but it hasn't gone anywhere. House Resolution number 40. So if an elected official is using reparations, which is an emotional issue for many African Americans, you're using that as a platform to get elected. My question to you is, how are you going to deliver on that promise? Number one, what's your legal argument for reparations? Because a lot of people will say, well, we worked for 246 years for free. You owe us $14 trillion. We want it in small bills. Now, that's not a legal argument. That's an emotional argument. Because if you go study the history of slavery, you weren't supposed to get paid. That's the whole purpose of it. The whole purpose of slavery was to teach you skills, use skills you already have, work you until you die, and not compensate you. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. So it wasn't like we had a contract to be paid and they didn't pay us. No, the whole purpose was not to pay you in the first place. So how do you come 153 years later, at least, and then say we want back compensation? That's not a legal argument. Slavery was wrong. That's a moral argument. But so a lot of the arguments for reparations are not legal arguments. One legal argument would be to say, well, in 1807, the U.S. Congress passed a law that outlawed the international transatlantic slave trade, meaning that in 1807, the U.S. Congress passed a law that outlawed Africans being brought into this country as slaves. And it went into effect January 1st, 1808. So all the Africans that were brought into this country from January 1st, 1808 to about 1860, because Civil War starts April 12th, 1861, all of them that were brought in from January 1st, 1808, that's all illegal because it violated the federal law of the U.S. So now you have some type of legal argument. Prior to that, It was legal to bring them into the country. It was legal to work them to death. It was legal not to pay them. So trying to sue and say we never got paid, well, hell, you weren't supposed to get paid. I'm not saying it was right. I'm saying that was the whole purpose. So oftentimes we don't understand the difference between a legal argument and a moral argument. And you don't go to a legal court to make a moral argument. That's why none of those lawsuits have worked. Another legal argument would be to enforce the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. And that's something that Dr. Claude Anderson is taking up and pushing for. Because the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, that's law. And that was amongst the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. And when they got pushed off their land in southeastern United States because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, they all go out west over 1,000 miles on the Trail of Tears, going to Oklahoma. And they take their Black slaves with them because they all 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans own Black slaves, African slaves. And when the Civil War came, they fought on behalf of the Civil War because they didn't want to give their slaves up. Okay? But they didn't know they were violating the treaties that they had signed with the U.S. government, because there were clauses in the treaties that they would never take up arms against the Union. Okay, so after the Civil War ends, they're going to have to sign these new treaties, and the treaties forced them to release their slaves, and they were the formerly enslaved African people. They were given compensation. They were given land. They were given funding from the government. They were made full members of those Native American nations. Okay, so they were given some type of compensation, and those treaties are still being enforced today. Now, we got pushed out of those treaties about 1941, but those 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, they still get government assistance because of those treaties. So now that's a legal argument. That's law that is still on the books, still being enforced today. That's a legal argument. A lot of this other stuff are not legal arguments. They're moral arguments. And you don't go to a legal court to make a moral argument. We don't understand the difference. I interviewed Dr. Jahi Issa and Brother Reggie Marbury. I think it was early this year, because they wrote an article, or co-wrote an article for Black Agenda Report dealing with reparations that's dead. Here's how to revive it. And they were talking about the legal argument, the real legal argument for reparations based upon the law that went into effect in 1808 that outlawed the importation of Africans into this country. Okay, but I think you're going to find when it came to Jill Stein making reparations part of her platform, I think you're going to find that was poll tested. I think you're going to find they did surveys to see like what were important issues that resonated with African Americans, because she knew wasn't going to have to come through on it. But what were important issues that resonated with African Americans to get them to support her, to take votes away from Hillary Clinton to help Donald Trump win? So when all of it comes out, just remember, I tried to tell you, because I was telling people back during the election what was going on. Okay, so check out this one from the New York Times also. Russian 2016 influence operation targeted African Americans on social media. All right, hey, African American business owners, hey, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast, and email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com, customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise. with the African History Network. We take your 30-second and 60-second commercial. We put into the audio podcast of our radio show. We broadcast our show Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And each show, we're on 6 different podcast platforms. We're on iTunes, Castbox, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio. We're on 6 different podcast platforms. Each episode gets about between 4,000 to 8,000 listens in the first 2 weeks. So you can reach a lot of new potential customers. Email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information. Because current promotion is get 50% off your first month, and second month is free. All right, let's look at Corey said Hillary Clinton stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. No, she didn't steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was not a Democrat. This is what people do not understand. Bernie Sanders was an interloper. He was in Congress for 25 years as an independent. He started in the U.S. House of Representatives in 1991. He switched over and was elected as a U.S. Senator in 2007. He was in Congress. Bernie Sanders was not new. He was in Congress for 25 years as an independent. The only reason he switched over to the Democratic Party was to run for president. That was it. Because when he went back to the U.S. Senate, he switched back as an independent. And I was just on his U.S. Senate page 2 weeks ago, senate.gov. I was just on his Senate page, and it has him listed as an independent. He went back to being an independent. No. People's feelings are hurt. You don't understand politics. No. Bernie Sanders was not a Democrat. The only reason why he joined the Democratic Party and ran as a Democrat is because he said it would be too hard to run as an independent and to be able to get his name, to get the required signatures to be on the ballots in all 50 states. If he ran as an independent, it would be much harder to run as an independent. It's not impossible, but no. So the Democrats are like, who the hell are you? Even though he votes, he caucuses with the Democrats in the Senate, he's not a Democrat. So they're like, who the hell are you? The same thing would happen if an independent wanted to run as a Republican. They're like, wait a second, if Sanders wanted to run as a Republican and he'd been in Congress for 25 years as an independent, like, why don't you run as an independent? Why you running as a Republican? No, people still don't understand that. They said, and it split the vote. The reason why I split the vote is because people were caught up on personality over policies. That's why I split the vote. People were caught up on personalities. This is why I tell people it's not about personalities, it's not about political affiliation, it's about the policies. People didn't go look at Donald Trump's policies, they didn't pay attention. I saw over 100 campaign speeches that Donald Trump made, over 100 campaign speeches and interviews he made during the election. Saw over 100 of them. I did fact checking on statements that he made. I read all the policies he had at his website. I think it was donaldjtrump.com. He had 13 policies at his website. Hillary Clinton had 36 at her website. I read all of her policies. I read all of his policies. I did fact checking on his statements. I did fact checking on her statements. Okay? They ain't pay attention to any of that. They just dealt with who they like. I'm not caught up on personalities. I deal with the policies, because the policies, that's what's going to impact you. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So, hey, guys, in Detroit, I'll be speaking at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, second day of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia. That's Thursday, December 27th. I'm there 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Malcolm X Grassroots Movement is organizing that event. I'm there the first 3 days of Kwanzaa. It's taking place 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. basically each day. Now on Saturdays or Sunday, like New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, I'm not sure. Visit theright.org, WRIGHT, theright.org for more information. It's free and open to the public. I'll be a vendor there the first 3 days, so we'll have a vendor table. And then also I'm speaking at Burt's Warehouse on Saturday, December 29th. I'm there 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. for the fourth day of Kwanzaa, the Kwanzaa celebration that the People's Action Committee is doing, Brother Nagas Vu. So I'll be speaking there. Also, I'll have a vendor table. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have that information there at our website, okay? We have the DVD, 8 DVD bundle pack, The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus. The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus is at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have some of those shipping out tomorrow, so I'll be working on orders tomorrow. And that includes a double lecture I did with Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And his book deals with the African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years. But this 8 DVD bundle pack deals with who was here in America. It deals with the African presence in this country before Europeans got here and also before Native Americans got here. Okay, and includes a lecture from Dr. Ivan Van Sertima dealing with they came before Columbus, one from Dr. John Henrik Clark dealing with Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, and then also a double lecture I did with Professor Kabahaya Walter Kamene, formerly known as Booker T. Coleman from the Hidden Colors documentaries, dealing with the African presence here and in Mexico also, okay? So that's an 8 DVD bundle pack, The Africans That Were Here Before Columbus. When you read Trump's page, did he say Mexico was going to pay for the wall? I don't remember if he had that on his page, but he said that on his, he said it on the campaign trail. He said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. Also, Trump did not have a criminal justice reform program either. Hillary Clinton did. People really need to go to the campaign websites of candidates who are running and like actually read their policies. Okay, because Trump did not have a criminal justice reform program. And if you like look at some of my presentations, like, and if you like look at the lecture that I did, African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. African American resistance in the era of Donald Trump, voter suppression, reparations, and how elections have consequences. I go through and I deal with how Trump is reversing a lot of policies that President Obama had in place. There have been over 100 policy reversals, all across the board. Department of Education, Department of Justice, Environmental Protection Agency, HUD, all across the board. And a lot of these policy reversals are detrimental to African Americans, but we didn't even know that they existed. This is an example of how elections have consequences. All right. Okay, and then also, hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, or go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button there. If you don't have a PayPal account, do that. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can donate debit card or credit card. That helps us to stay on the air, keep doing the research, keep broadcasting our show, pay the bills, etc. Okay, we got Lee. Okay, so pay attention to what's going on. Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered Monday through Friday. He broadcasts live 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and it repeats. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on YouTube. Roland Martin on YouTube, and also Roland Martin on Facebook, because that's like the best daily show. And he does a lot of good interviews. He deals with politics. He deals with economics. He deals with a lot of information. Okay, and when he broadcasts live, we usually try to share the broadcast here on our fan page, the African History Network. Okay, all right, guys. Look at here. I have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. You know, at the Kwanzaa event last year, at the end of my presentation, the second day of Kwanzaa, because I usually speak there for Malcolm X grassroots movement. Second day of Kwanzaa, I did a little spoken word after my presentation. And it was called, I told you this fool is crazy, right? And it went something like this. If you were shocked when Ali beat Foreman's behind, wait till you see Donald Trump resign. He's a con man and a fraud and lost all 3 debates. He's the first Russian president of the United States. He cheated on all 3 of his wives and had children by different babies' mamas. Donald Trump is everything negative white people thought they would get from Obama. He has black people, what the hell do you have to lose, as he stared right in our face, then reversed over 100 policies that President Obama had in place. When he resigns from office, I'm going to say, see you, wouldn't want to be you. Because this fool is trying to start a war in Jerusalem and North Korea. Too many people didn't vote in 2016 because of false pretenses. Donald Trump is a perfect example of how elections have consequences. All right, I got to get out of here. Talk to y'all later. Peace.